what are known as the sheep's paths in Vamos, Crete. It's hard not to notice, even when the earth is dry, and see abundance of poppies. And whilst it is summertime and the sun is warm and the poppies are beautiful in all their glow, sadly it always brings me back to the poem Flanders Field, which I read earlier on, and memories of remembrance Sundays spent together, and the loss of all those lives in both the First, Second, and other wars. The poppy is a symbol of remembrance, not just here in the United Kingdom, but also there is the Anzac poppy in Australia and New Zealand. There is a specific poppy worn in South Africa. In Barbados and Trinidad and Tobago, and many other countries have taken on board the poppy as a sign of remembrance. Not a sign to celebrate war, but to remember all those who died in war. Initially, in America, in the United States of America, it was worn to commemorate US veterans of overseas wars. Here in Ireland, both the Republic and in Northern Ireland, many people wear the poppy, although there has always been an element of controversy, some of it related to the Troubles here in Northern Ireland, and how in some communities there is still a sensitivity because how they suffered at the hands of some army soldiers. And that is understandable. But also should be remembered, in the First World War, 34,000 Irishmen perished and 200,000 Irishmen, North and South, served. In the Second World War, 70,000 Irishmen, some of them members of my own family, joined up in the army from what was known then as ERA, now the Irish Republic, and they served. I remember in our own church in Dublin, the Unitarian Church, many men who had left their jobs and their education to go and fight in the Second World War against fascism. The Irish poppy, which I have on my jacket, you can look at it later, the poppy embedded in a shamrock, was introduced in Limerick a number of years ago. And it was worn by Leo Varadkar when he was Taoiseach in Dáil Éireann. And the present Irish Taoiseach, Micheál Martin, will lay a wreath in Enniskillen today. And the First Minister, Michelle O'Neill, is attending the remembrance service at City Hall, as well as our own moderator, Reverend Alistair Bell. There are a range of different poppies. There is the purple poppy, which is often forgotten, and it's sold to raise funds for animals and to commemorate all those animals who served and died during wars. We think of the horses in the First World War. And then there is the white poppy, and we've one on display in the church today. The white poppy, which is issued on behalf of the Peace Pledge Union, that the poppy may become a symbol of peace. I have heard also of the black poppy that's worn in the Caribbean to commemorate all those of African descent who died during the First and Second World War. And lately, there is the rainbow poppy, commemorating those LGBT plus servicemen and women, some who were expelled from the armed forces when it was discovered that they were gay. And yet, thousands of gay and lesbians served and died during both world wars. Thankfully, times have changed, and the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire has a new memorial unveiled only last week by His Majesty the King to remember gays, lesbians, and bisexuals who served and died. Sometimes we ask ourselves, to whom do we owe the poppy? Who do we thank for becoming the most known remembrance symbol possibly in the world? It is to a French woman, Anna Goury, who became known as the Poppy Lady of France. Born Anna Alix Voel in France on the 3rd of February, 1878. For part of her life, she was a teacher in Madagascar, a lecturer for the Alliance Française. But it was during World War I, Anna fundraised for hungry people in France. She, with the help of many others, produced thousands of cloth poppies that were sold throughout America and were worn to raise money, mostly for starving women and children in France and in Belgium. Anna was deeply touched by the poem In Flanders Fields, and also she was touched by the image of the poppies, as we all are, growing yet in the most awful spaces where men had died in their thousands. Later in her life, for her dedicated work, she received a number of decorations from both France and the United States of America. But for me, probably the most interesting poppy story is the adoption of this emblem by the Ukraine. This was in 2014 to honor those who had died in the Second World War, not only in their thousands, but in their millions on the Eastern Front. The Ukrainian poppy was designed by Selchi Mishhakin, a noted campaigner and graphic artist in Kiev, in Ukraine. And Selchi insisted on the words, "never again," being imprinted on every Ukrainian poppy produced. The poppy in the Ukraine replaced the St. George's ribbon, and that was because the ribbon was long associated with Soviet Russia and submission to that regime. Sadly, the Ukrainian poppy has taken on a deeper significance now with Ukrainians because of the ongoing war, which is often forgotten. The terrible, terrible losses. The loss of life in that ongoing war is horrendous. It is believed possibly 46,000 Ukrainians have died, and possibly more than 360,000 people have been injured. those numbers, when they're delivered like that, become abstract because they're so vast. And we should never forget, and we should acknowledge that on the Russian side, there are possibly 1 million dead or injured, and yet the war, sadly and tragically, continues. It always intrigues me that a flower so simply beautiful, and especially when it's photographed as we've seen on our screen, a flower that's loved and enjoyed by so many in our warm summers, can also be so poignant and painful when observed and when remembered and worn in the month of November. A shimmering scarlet mass of colour, yet at times we even see ones of different colours, yellow, purple. But it is the scarlet symbol that plays with our feelings. And when we observe a sea of red poppies, not only do we see the beauty, but it becomes an act of remembrance. Maybe in some poetic way, each one growing in a field in vastness, marking a beautiful life lost to another war. Loving God, we beseech you with all our hearts, with all our souls, to help us find a path away from our incurable destruction. Amen.